Hello, Cubs fans, and welcome to a brand new edition of Cubs on Tap. I am Ron Luce. I am joined by the Juice Man himself. It's a Cubs off day. It's a Monday. Juice and I were sharing our Bears stories from the weekend. We both, participated in the hashtag Crack'em movement at the Bears game, and a big win nonetheless. That was covered over by our friends at Bears on Tap. We're here to talk about a series victory against the Buccos, Juice. But before we get into all of it, how are you doing, my friend?
Doing good, man. Got a chance, like you said, to go to the Bears game yesterday and watched the Cubs play well over the weekend, which was nice. I think there's a lot of good things to talk about for this series because, while there is baseball being played that not a lot of people are watching, our job here at Cubs on Tap is to highlight those that people aren't seeing or didn't have the chance to see over a busy weekend. And I'm excited to dive into this as the Cubs took 3 out of 4 from Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. How awesome was that?
It's absolutely awesome, man. Series wins are cool and tough. And Juice, let's start there because, like you said, 3 of 4 by the Cubbies taken in Pittsburgh over the Buccos. Game 1 taken by a final score of 3-2, 6-5. Then on Friday, they dropped Saturday's game, shutout 6-0. But they did win 8-3 yesterday to cap off the series victory. And Juice, I mean, the first thing, and I've got it in my little tagline here tonight on the StreamYard, is holy pitching, because the starting pitching just in the second half has been electric. I actually just saw but literally minutes before we jumped on tonight, Juice, a tweet from, and I'm getting the name up right now. I'm going to go find it here in a second. But a user on Twitter, I want to properly credit because, I kid you not, I literally just saw this thing. But the Cubs have the third best starting pitcher ERA since essentially the All-Star break in the second half in all of baseball. There's only 2 teams that are better than them. They're both playoff teams. So it just goes to show they've got what it takes from a starting pitching perspective, and I've got it. Here we go. It's he goes just by Brad on Twitter, but he's at Balls K Walk. I'm trying to even depict me trying to describe anything in terms of graphics right now.
Sure.
But he's got a great following. People will know him. He usually tweets out a lot of the highlights of the minor leaguers and stuff. You'll know him if you see him. But he said starting pitcher ERA in the second half. And this is the top 10, Juice. The Los Angeles Dodgers are number 1. No surprise. The Houston Astros are number 2. Both of them are sub 3, 271, 279 ERAs. Cubs are third, 3.15 ERA. Then you got the Mets coming in at 4 with a 3.27. The White Sox at 5 at a 3.38. Atlanta 3.46. Cleveland 3.52. Arizona 3.58. Tampa Bay Rays 3.64. And the Los Angeles Angels 3.66. Of all those teams, only one team with a losing record in that time period, and that actually is the Los Angeles Angels. Otherwise, even the Cubs are 15-15 in that stretch. So still playing 500 ball, despite elite starting pitching. And we saw more of it in this series, Juice. Wesneski looked absolutely fantastic on Thursday night. 6 1/3, 2 quality starts and 2 big league starts for him now. Again, cool and tough. And they kept it going. Javier Assad only worked 4 innings on Friday, but looked good overall. And the bullpen got it done from there. Obviously, Miley got a little beat up on Saturday. That is what it is. But Adrian Sampson goes 6 on Sunday in the win. I mean, Juice, this is even in their quote unquote best 5 right now. And they are just pitching their asses off right now, man. I want to hear your thoughts on it because it's been fun to watch.
Pitching is the ultimate currency in baseball. We've seen it. We've seen absolutely the ability of teams like the Dodgers to have great pitching for a long time and be competitive. I think it's great. We talk about it all the time on here. That competition kind of builds, that winning atmosphere. 2016 was a lot about competition, right? The next starter was trying to beat the next. We talked about that. That's been a theme of the season. I've been trying to see if the Cubs would get back to that. And you mentioned, this isn't the group of pitchers that pitched in this series that a lot of experts would say is their best 5, like you said. And that's something that I think is indicative of what they're doing with Pitch Lab, with, the developmental aspects of pitching. And that's great to see. I loved that seeing Wesneski get in a little trouble and work himself out. He definitely did that in that 7th inning. A couple times, I think it was maybe the 3rd or the first inning, when they had to review the play at first on touching the bag there, which he did. It was great to see him get in some trouble and then face some adversity. That's something I talked about in the last show that we did together, that I wanted to see him get into trouble, not have such easy innings, but still, like, he had those easy innings with that immaculate inning, of course.
Yeah.
Which was something to, and he also too, like, I was happy. I've never been more happier to see him hang a slider and then have him be paid for it. And that happened. I think that was Newman who took him out.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken. But don't make any buts about it either, because that Pirates team has a lot of young talent themselves, and they were able to still hold them at bay, pun intended, on that, as we saw his major league debut. So with that said, I look a lot at what they're doing at the minor league level all the way up, and it's a breath of fresh air. And I think it just speaks so much extra, shout and whispering for the offseason that, like, hey, Tom, let's add, man. Let's go for it. Because baseball is such a funny game that you could absolutely have a great year with the pitching that you have and the number of arms available at your arsenal for next year, and find yourself in a playoff spot and roll the dice and see where, those numbers lie once you get into there, because it's a break here and there that sometimes win these playoff series. So I think there's a lot to be excited about as a Cub fan. I know the talk around Chicago is the fact that, like, the White Sox are eating a lot of crow for what they did over. And I wanted to propose this question to you. Has the gap between the talent on these teams or the amount of excitement kind of closed between both sides? And kind of just get your thoughts on what you would do as an off-season manager to bridge that gap even further, because the Cubs have played very, very good baseball in this second half. If we go through the list of the series, they have beaten good teams. I mean, they swept that Mets series. The Pirates, they look bad, but like I said earlier, there's a lot of good young talent. They've showed that they can hang with these teams, and that's without any of the reinforcements. I guess my question starts to become, has the trending switched in Chicago, where one is maybe going on the down or unsure, maybe not down as much as unsure, and now the Cubs are kind of ascending into that, maybe this rebuild isn't as long as we thought it was going to be. And that's something I think I don't want to, gloat on this show, but I think it's been a fairly, consistent kind of theme to our show, that there is absolutely a lot to be excited about for the future. And that we have said it on this show plenty of times. The rebuild is not going to be long, in our opinion. I think this is a reset year, and you could be contending as early as next year or showing promise of contending, next year. And I think that kind of pushes up maybe the spending too. So I just wanted your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think as the second half went on, we started getting some of that, like, 2014 vibes of this team. And I think that was something we were all hoping for earlier in the year. And we didn't get it right away, because guys like Seiya Suzuki took a little longer to come on and get hot. It really was kind of like Ian Happ and the boys early in the season. And Willie obviously was scorching coming out of the gate. But now you've seen some of these other guys step up. Even, Esteban Quiroz, who came up and had a hell of a week. I mean, he was incredible, at the plate, even in the field. Yeah, and an awesome story. Absolutely awesome story. Finally getting to see the Harold Ramirez trade come to fruition too, with Quiroz making it to the big leagues as well. Your little 2022 season trivia for everybody. But I really do think this team has played well enough. And to your point, Juice, you mentioned the White Sox. They're 21-20 in that stretch with the ERA that I was just talking about, where the Cubs are 15-15. Not terribly different.
No.
You know what I mean? Not terribly different at all. And a lot of really good comments here already from everybody in the comments. First off, thanks for joining, everybody. We appreciate you guys. But Scott started it kind of off. He goes 15-15 record with the third best ERA in baseball. He says shows how bad the offense is and has struggled at times this year. And he says hashtag sign Judge, and Jack R follows that up that he agrees. And he says that Judge is his number one target. And I think from that angle, I don't think Judge is going to be worth the money. And I know people are going to hate me for that because the guy's got 62 bombs. And here's the difference is you can find guys that can hit for power that are going to probably cost a hell of a lot less than Aaron Judge is in the offseason. You know what I mean? And, there's guy. I mean, if they sign a Turner's got 20 bombs this year. Like, that's a guy that hits for some slug. I think you're going to see more slug out of a guy like Nico Horner next year. I think you're going to see more slug out of Seiya Suzuki next year. Like, there is still power in this lineup. Obviously not Aaron Judge power, but when you're 6'7" and you make baseballs look like tennis balls, it's normal. But I really think they can maybe add one or two bats of power with that money that it would take to get Judge. Don't get me wrong. If Judge wants to come and the dollars make sense, cool. But also reminding people that Judge is also 30 years old. Like, this isn't a guy who's some, 20, and in fairness, Turner is too. And, these guys are getting older. But, there's no guarantee that he's going to even put up 50 consistently over the next couple of years. Now, granted, I mean, if he's still hitting 40 bombs a year, that's fucking awesome. But not when he's getting paid like a 60 home run hitter. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where it's like, do they really need him, though? Because you already have a crowded outfield, right? You got to worry about where PCA and Brennan Davis going to play. Where's Ian Happ going to play? Where's, Seiya Suzuki going to play? And you really can't – I mean, you could DH him, I guess, but he's a good enough athlete where you want to play him in the field. So, plus I think the New York Mets are just going to –
that was going to be my response to that.
Yeah.
I think Aaron Judge may end up getting a stake in the Mets by the time that that contract is finally inked. I too, I love the idea of adding power to the lineup. It all comes down to the way what way does Jed and company? I always keep saying I love the Jed and company line. We need our own little T-shirt. Jed and company Cubs on tap. Starting this all Jed and company run. It's much like Dead and Company. Maybe we can do something with the designing on that. So it all depends on what they believe they want this ball club to look like. Yep. I like Judge, don't get me wrong, but if you're signing Judge to be just a DH, it's a lot of money to just run into your DH slot. Like you said, you want him to play. And if they're going to play him and still have Ian Happ, that means you're shifting Ian Happ back to center field, which all things show from the course of the year, Ian Happ has been largely defensively valuable at his position in left field. So they're going to have to find, obviously, a place to put him. And with a caliber player like that, you find a spot if he wants to be here. With that said, I don't think he's going to hit the open market. I think that the Yankees will very much so be in his ear from the minute the offseason starts and say, hey, let's get this locked down. What do you want? Because they can't afford to let him go. I love the idea of it, though. That is exactly what the Cubs have to add this offseason. They have to add some pop for this lineup. And I think maybe in a lot of ways, it may come internally. Guys like Mash Mervis, guys like, Brennan Davis, like we talked about. There'll be a lot of internal moves, I think, that may address that maybe that opens up the Cubs to maybe grab another guy like Xander Bogaerts, who, is great with the bat, is able to, poke the ball all around, make you play straight up. And I think that that's kind of maybe all things that we've heard coming out of Cubs camp and things like that, what they believe in. They've kind of moved away from the let's pack it with bombers and see how far we go. Mm-hmm. We just talked about the White Sox. The White Sox did a lot of that, and you end up with a station-to-station ball club that can't field. That's exactly what the Cubs don't want to run into. I want to kind of shed a light on a guy who I think is playing really good baseball down the stretch, and I didn't believe much in him, and I still kind of don't, but I'm curious to hear but McKinstry, that guy plays such great defense. And it's interesting to see him end with a great, kind of end of his season, kind of keeping, that momentum going. And we talked about, him coming over and them trading for him, at this deadline. Yeah. And it's a great value to have a guy like that can play around the field. I think it's just very understated how well he's played over the course of this. And I wanted to give him his due because he's a guy that we talked about on this, that you're saving tons of money for positions that you could potentially invest in. With that money that you are saving, how many times does a team go out and gets a utility man and it becomes expensive? You look at what Ben Zobrist was to the Cubs. Yeah, that contract absolutely was worth every penny. But it was expensive for what he was. He's a guy who put the bat on the ball. He had some power, but he could play around the field and be that for you. I'm not saying that McKinstry's going to be that, but I do hope that he could be some type of form of that, because if you're able to add a man like that as your 26th man on the roster, that is so valuable at the amount of money that he'll be making, over the course of the next couple seasons. It's much like what I think Theo Epstein was trying to do with David Bodie.
Yes.
Before David Bodie was hurt. Mm-hmm. But with that said, I look at his play over the course of this last couple runs of games here and a couple series as well. He's played very well for the last couple months, or like month and a half-ish. I think he's been pretty good. It's just interesting to see, and I wanted to make sure that I gave him, a little bit of the shout out, because I am seeing it. And I'm absolutely seeing, a lot of guys on this Cubs team come back and have good caps to the end of the season. Christopher Morel is one of them. He was kind of dragging going into this last, September month. And there's a lot of talk. We had to talk on this show about, should he be sent down? Does he deserve the at-bats? And yeah, absolutely. He's kind of putting the cherry on the top of his season. Has it been fantastic? No, I think there's a lot of room for improvement for him. He had a space of baseball where he wasn't playing well. But that's the type of attitude you want in a young player. Hey, I'm not playing too good. I know I'm not, but I'm going to keep going into the hitting cage and getting work and making sure that when I take my bats, I'm taking it seriously all the way to the end, because that's exactly what this end of the season looks like. If he can cap it and then have some momentum, figure out what he's got to work on, and come back with that confidence. Hey, I didn't hit well for a couple months, but at that end of the year, I really turned it around and I had a good run at going into the offseason. That's so valuable. I think Scott actually commented in there how valuable off seasons are in one of the last shows we had. And I cannot agree with him anymore on that. Off-season baseball is exactly why guys like Nico Horner break out. And you look and see how strong he got. And now you're talking about having a pillar there, a guy that you don't have to worry about, a guy who's very cost-effective, over the course of the next couple of years. And that's what wins. That's what allows you to go and get a Jason Hayward, who, you thought was going to work out, but you're in the running for a big market player, right, on a big team. You're able to be that big team, and you're able to flex your muscles financially even more. And I think there's a lot of great that we looked at over the course. And even this series, I'm going to give the Pirates a lot of credit, man. They got a lot of great talent. If they could ever put it all together, that Pirates team would be pretty scary. I mean, Reynolds may be the hottest hitter in baseball right now. That's how good that guy's been over the course of the last couple months. And the Cubs beat a team that on record wise aren't nothing to really talk about. But if you look at what's on the field and what they're building over there, it's impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And, kind of taking each, of your points in stride here, Juice. First off, speaking of Mash Mervis, Scott says, holy fuck, Mervis just hit number 36 because the Iowa Cubs are playing tonight. Yeah, that guy's got power, clearly. He's shown it at the minor league level. Like he's in all-time conversation in terms of Cub minor leaguers for home runs in a season, right? I mean, he was, going into when was this the other day? Going into like late last week, he was at 34. mean, he's already at 36. I think Baez had 37 in 1 year, so he's chasing Javi. And then I don't know if he's going to catch KB. KB had I think it was 43 or 42 in that one season before he came up. But
man, he should have never been down there that long.
No, absolutely the fuck not. But it just goes to show, right? How good Mervis has been in terms of power. And sometimes you find that power from within. Bring up Mervis next year, maybe. Again, more breakout from guys like Seiya and Nico in the slugging department. Morel can hit for power. Morel's got 15 home runs, and he hasn't even played the whole season. You know what I mean?
And I think Brendan Davis is a big key to this too.
Absolutely.
I mean, if Brendan Davis comes back healthy, that's 20 bombs right there. I mean, he has that capability to be that 25, 30 home run hitter in center field who plays, spectacular defense as well. So I think that off season is going to be really interesting because I think it's going to paint a picture on how much they value each player, not only on the roster right now, but even in the minor leagues, because it'll be indicative on how confident they are at each position going forward. If they go out and get a first baseman and Mash Mervis isn't somebody that it'll clearly mean that they don't believe the hype of the power, which I don't think that they're gonna. He's young. I think that they're gonna try to give that run to him for next year. But it'd be interesting to see which positions they target, because if they do go out and they get a center fielder, let's say the Judge is in play, he's played center sometimes this year, or they feel like they can move Ian Happ back to center field. It'll be interesting to see the fallout on Brendan Davis. That would mean that they have insider information, which they should, on how healthy that back really is going to be and how much that's going to limit him going forward. That would be interesting news to see. So I want to just let all of our listeners know that the offseason moves will definitely tell a lot of things. It'll tell how quickly they think they can compete, and it'll also tell you what they think of our favorite players. There's going to be a lot of heartbreak from here and, around the conversations we had, because they may sign a guy at a position where you had a player typed in that you thought was going to be something. And that doesn't mean that he won't be, right? But it'll show how much they believe in that player. So absolutely. I think that that's a big thing that we need to, highlight going forward on the show as we kind of turn from this season, the 2022 season, into the offseason.
Yeah, and one of those guys too, right, that you could almost make an argument toward right there is Morel, right, and what he's done so far. But like you said, he has really looked better lately. His last 15 games, the average isn't great. He's only hitting 143, but an OBP of 302 is still not atrocious. It's not great, but it's not atrocious. But in his last 7 games, again, average still not great, 231, but a 412 on base and a 615 slugging. Yeah, that plays. I'll take 230 if you're going to do that shit and play good defense. That is A-okay with me. And he's really showing that he can do it. And to your point, Juice, that you made as well, right? This offseason, he might get better discipline at the plate and not strike out as much. Maybe he hits for a little higher average. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden, this team looks pretty good going into next season with a lot of youth and a lot of cheap talent that they can, like you said, kind of take to the bank, and you can spend where you need to spend. And as for McKinstry, just really quick, I agree. I think he's already won himself the utility man job, at least going into next season. I think he's played well enough. He can play second, he can play third, he can play short, he can play left or right if you absolutely needed him to. I don't think they necessarily think he needs to, but he can. He's done it. That's just a guy that when he can play 5 different positions in the field, and the bat hasn't been, oh my God, spectacular, but it's been fine. It's done the job. It's gotten it done. He's kind of been a spark plug at times when he's been at top of the lineup in that leadoff spot. So I think he's a guy that's at least earned himself a look as the utility guy for next season. And who knows, maybe he has kind of found himself a little home, because like you said, that dude plays great defense. That freaking catch he made the other night as he laid out and just did the Bears week 1 slide across the field on his chest. I mean, that shit was pretty cool. It was great. And here's Scott too in the comments with, he says Cubs not signing a free agent position player the team would look like potentially. He says Willie at catcher. My hot take going into the offseason is Willie will not be back with the Cubs, but nonetheless, first base Mervis, second base Morel, short for Horner, third base Wisdom. I know I know you're a big Wisdom guy, Scott. I also don't think Wisdom's with the team next year. But Happen left, Brendan in center, and Sayad right. I agree with that outfield completely. Again, as long as Brendan Davis is healthy. So I think, I think they have a good-looking team, but I still do think they go get a bat. And I know you. I love the Xander Bogaerts comp. He's a guy that's been tied to the Cubs a lot. He kind of fits the profile of the team, right? He's a high average hitter. I think he's been hitting like 320 this year. Just absolutely killing the baseball. Power numbers aren't, oh my God, spectacular, but there's enough pop there. He'll give you pop. And like you said, how do they want to build this team? Because you have your tinfoil hat take, Juice. We've talked about it. Jed's been in Theo's ear since they were working together about what he thinks baseball would look like under Theo. That's probably going to come to fruition. This team's going to be built with elite athletes, especially at the fielding positions, right? Because it's going to be guys that can get on base. Next year, the bigger bags. The Cubs are one of the highest running teams in the league right now. You add bigger bags into the equation, they're going to be sending guys on steals almost every other pitch. Guy gets on first, and you look at it top to bottom, right? Let's take Scott's lineup just at face value here. Morel can steal bags. Horner can steal bags. Happ can steal bags. Brendan Davis sure as fuck fast enough to steal bags. And even Seiya Suzuki still had like 9 or 10 steals this year. And he was only played 105 games. Like, there is a real potential. And then guys like coming, off the bench, like McKinstry and, some of these other guys, Nelly V can run. You know what I mean? Like, they have a lot of speed. This is going to be a team that's going to run a lot next year. They already run a ton now, but it's going to be even more so next year. But again, it's how do you want to build the team, right? You're not just going to start trying to fit square pegs and round holes. They have an idea of what this roster should look like for a competing team. That's what they're going to have to figure out. But again, not only for the players, but for the front office, the offseason is going to be huge, and it's going to be something fun because, realistically, you need maybe one starter if you really want to like pay for like a dude,
Yeah, I hope they do.
And I think they will, because you have Justin Steele, who, we've sat here and talked about it. He's got ace like shit. Stroman has been fucking awesome in the second half and really looks like himself again. You could have a healthy Kyle Hendricks. We don't know about that yet. It's still a very big question mark, but he's still a name that's in consideration. Drew Smiley could come back next year if they really want to give him the money, because he's been really good. You have Hayden Wesneski, who has kind of showed that he's got to at least be in the conversation for the rotation at the start of the year.
Got that dog in him.
He got that dog in him. Like maybe he doesn't get it right away, and they let him pitch in AAA for a month or something before he gets the full
I hope
call.
Not. Give him the full go.
I think
that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
And I think that with 2 starts left in the year, as long as those 2 starts are what we've seen, he needs to absolutely be a very penned in, penciled. Maybe his first name is in pen and his second name is in pencil type add in on this rotation, because you can't just show that type of stuff and then not reward it. He's absolutely done everything you've asked for, with next to no development at the big league level. We definitely know the ability that Tommy Hotovy has of speaking to pitchers too. Mm-hmm. And that's without a full season of Tommy Hotovy, which I think he's going to end up having a good influence on Hayden as well. I want to build on that Bogaerts thought just real quick, maybe before we move on and talk about the next series. I received a DM a couple months ago, and it got my tinfoil hat turning again. And it was from somebody who listens to our show. And it talked about the fact that he listens to a lot of sports radio around the nation because he drives for a living. Okay. And they were talking about in Boston how close Xander Bogaerts and Luis Devers are, or Rafael Devers are. And maybe that opens up a more or less like a line of free agents that come over from Boston at that point, because Devers' contract is one that's up, not this year, but the year after, and he will be heavily sought of. And the Cubs do have an open base at third right now with some question marks. So I don't like signing free agents on the hopes of another one comes. That's not the way I would ever conduct business. But with that said, there are other hidden, loves to Xander Bogaerts coming and being in a Cub uniform, because Boston does have some pieces that are going to hit the open market. And Devers is absolutely one of them because he's that good. Players like that just hit the open market. And the Cubs are going to have a ton of money to spend over the course of the next 2 years. So my hope is that if Bogaerts is here and he is a Cub, I'll be happy about that. But I'll also start turning to maybe next year is the year that they kind of announce themselves and make a wild card spot. And maybe the route to, being a World Series contender is they get a wild card spot. Maybe they get bounced in the playoffs. They play a hard fought series. They're just not talented enough. And maybe Devers is that piece that you bring in that you need to be in the middle of your lineup to solidify it all. And by then you're talking about a guy like Hayden Wesneski being, a full year through. You're talking about some of these other guys that Caleb Horton and Jordan Wicks and Caleb Killian having another year developmental. And then you're talking about guys like Gray, who were drafted out of high school, and Jackson Ferris, who will be another year through. And we'll have a good idea of where they're going to be at in the developmental stage. And you'll have all that high-level pitching, and you'll still have you'll still have Marcus Stroman. That's another thing too. Yeah. So you'll still have the ability to have that high level of pitching still with the guys you have now, and you have all these other reinforcements. You'll have an idea of if Brendan Davis is Brendan Davis that we saw, hurry through the system. I think that, and I didn't want to share too early that was a great DM from the guy who had sent it to me, and it got my mind churning a couple months ago on that thought, because that absolutely would look great having both of those guys in a Cub uniform. Do I know if it's going to happen? I don't know. We're talking 2 years down the line here. Yeah. But it's a plan to have, and Xander Bogaerts is a good start. That's a great start as a signing for the year this year. And then maybe one more, free agent pitcher that's top of the line. And the Cubs are scary. They'll be very they'll be a nuisance, I think, because the way the lineup is constructed. At that point, if Brendan Davis is Brendan Davis and Seiya is healthy, and you have that, and then Mash Mervis is doing Mash Mervis things, there's not an easy out in the lineup at that point.
No, there really isn't. And, I think another reason, too, speaking on Bogaerts, that his name is so heavily tied to the Cubs is because Jed was there when they drafted him in Boston. Or, when they signed him. He was an international free agent signing. They were there. It was Jed and Theo that were at the helm when they did that. So, I mean, it's going to be wild, man. Like, they have so much talent coming. They have so much financial flexibility. You're hitting on some of these guys. Like, could you imagine if we're looking back in 2-3 years from now, Juice, and Hayden Wesneski continues to look like what he's looked like, and we go, not a shot at him at all, but we got him for Scott Efros?
Yeah, right.
Like, holy shit. Like, that's big time. That would be up there then. And I'm not saying, like, Efros isn't going to have a great career at the Yankees, because he very well could. But that's up there with, like, Jake Arrieta trade shit right there. Yeah. Of, like, you just pulled a fast one on the Yankees. Good for you, because you just went out and got a game changer in your rotation, right? Because starting pitchers don't grow on trees, right? The joke of the failed starters are bullpen guys, right? Like, yeah, guys fail and don't get to be starters at the big league level. This dude's showing right now that, like, he could be an ace if he continues to develop. And he's still so young. He's only 24. He's already at the big leagues. Like, this dude's going to be pitching for years to come in Chicago. And it's going to be pretty cool and tough. Also worth noting, Keegan Thompson continues to look great. It was Scott's comment that prompted that thought. He says, if I was David Ross, I would publicly name Keegan Thompson as the closer. He has that closer dog in him, and he kind of does. But I kind of like Keegan in that 2 and 3 inning role, because when he comes in and just slays through the lineup, that dude, like you and I talked about the last time we were on the mic, that dude in the playoffs is an X factor and a fucking weapon. And that's like, you can't. A lot of those guys don't grow on trees either.
Especially
have a couple of them.
Especially think about it this way: if it's a Justin Steele start, because you're probably packing, or not Justin Steele. If you're packing it with a lefty, and he comes in, and you're going to have a lot of righties in your lineup, in the opposing lineup. I mean, you're talking about a guy who comes in who has plus stuff against right-handed hitters.
Yeah.
So that's
just mows them down.
Yeah. So I mean, if Justin Steele is pitching, you're really neutralizing the fact that, you're hoping he can get through 5 innings, and then you have a premier right-handed 3-inning guy like Keegan Thompson, who's able to shut it down, and it's a matchup problem. It really creates some issues for the opposing manager at that point, because you have that holster. Maybe a bat gets burned earlier because coming in out of the gate or coming in after is a plus right-handed Keegan Thompson. So you have to try to get to whoever's pitching earlier. So maybe it kind of dictates how the game is managed. And yeah, I do too. I think Keegan, and this is the new baseball, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the fact that guys like Josh Hader are valuable because even more than the closer, because that ends up being, 3 innings that you don't have to account for with a mess of pitchers that you don't know what you're getting from. And that's, I think that's maybe, like I said, more valuable than the closing pitcher. And I think too that there's going to be a huge competition when it comes to the closing role next year. There's a lot of great names that throw very hard, that are definitely better suited in that 9th inning role, that are names that we're not even talking about right now. I mean, there's a reason why the Tennessee Smokies and the South Bend Cubs were so good, because the back end of the bullpen had some guys with some nasty stuff that shut games down. Watched a lot of those games. There's a lot of names that I'll start to bring up once we get to this off-season show that I think are kind of dark horses to really move through that system quicker than we think they will, because they are that damn good. Blanking on it real quick, but the South Bend closer, that guy has nasty stuff. I think his last name starts with like an N or something like that. I forgot. But that guy, long flowing hair, nasty stuff. Throws like 100. It's gross.
I think you're thinking of Riley Martin.
Is it Riley Martin?
It is Riley Martin. Fun fact about Riley Martin, because he went to Quincy, which is Division II, drafted by the Cubs just recently, and
yes, Riley Martin. Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. A good friend of mine actually grew up with Riley Martin. He's actually from like the St. Louis area. He's from like Southern Illinois. So yeah, I like Riley Martin because he does have some nasty shit. So that's absolutely guy. He's already up with Tennessee actually. After South Bend season ended, they sent him up as like a, hey, go up and be another arm.
There you go.
While they're chasing the playoffs. So yeah, I think Riley Martin's a guy that absolutely has a shot, because if he starts next year in Double-A, absolutely just kills it at the Double-A level. You probably could skip him from Triple-A and just bring him up to the show and see what he's got. But yeah, you name all the good guys that could be in that closing role, right? I mean, Brandon Hughes, is another guy who's going to be in that.
Braylon Marquez, who throws 100 from the left-hand side.
Yeah, Braylon Marquez, as long as he's healthy, absolutely has a shot. And even guys that we forget about that are hurt this year, Brad Wick, Cody Hoyer, like they're going to be really healthy next year, and that bullpen's going to be sick. I mean, they're just going to have arm after arm after arm coming out of that pen, and it's going to make for some nasty stuff. But Juice, really quick, also a good weekend for Patrick Wisdom. I think that's worth mentioning. Good for him. Got all the way up to his 25th home run, just hitting moonshots in Pittsburgh. Showing off the mitt the other day too in that Marlins series in right field. Like just kind of having a nice end to his season too. That way, as a player that I enjoy, and I think he might not have a future with the Cubs next season, but maybe he has a future somewhere else because he's played really well down the stretch, and it's certainly cool to see. But Juice, I do want to turn it back over to you, my friend, as we start to slowly approach the 40-minute mark here. Do you have any final thoughts on this Pittsburgh series, and just looking ahead now as we get into literally the home stretch here, 9 games left in the season?
Yeah, it's sad, right? I always hate when it flips and there's only 9 left. Even in seasons like this, I always want more Cubs baseball. I always do. I don't care how bad they are. I just enjoy going to the ballpark, watching the games, hearing the sounds. It'd be sad to watch baseball go. I'm excited for the playoffs, though. I think it's going to be a very eventful one for the MLB. But no, great series in Pittsburgh. It's good to go in and capture seasons. We absolutely talked about playing well down the stretch, and they're doing that. I think we would be yelling back and forth and upset a lot more if they were losing these games, because they absolutely deserve to cap this season on the high note and send a message. It's all about sending a message to Jed and to Tom Ricketts to, hey, let's write some checks, man, because this is further along than we thought. And adding players that are on young, maybe they're young players that are going to be, the back end of the deal won't look too great, but the back end of the deal could mean that you're bridging the gap to one of these prospects. And that's something that I think they absolutely need to look at. They need to spend some money in this offseason. Again, like they did last year, they tried to spend more with, Correa, and that didn't work out. But, luckily they get another swing at it. There's a lot of great names at this year in the free agent market. And the best way the ball club today and going down the stretch of these 9 games can push more and more and put more and more pressure on that front office to spend, the better. And they do that by winning games down the stretch here. And that's exactly what they're doing. And I love to see it. I know they're screwing their pick. I think they're at like the 11th or 10th pick now, which, hey, sucks. I think they have like a 1.5% chance of winning the lottery or something stupid like that. But maybe we'll get, some David Stern frozen envelope stuff going on, and the Cubs will end up with the first pick anyway, which would be pretty cool. But I don't think they'll do it that way. It'll probably end up with the Cubs with the 10th pick, and they'll probably pick another great player right there, because that's what this front office does. They identify talent and they draft, and that's exactly what they're going to do with this pick as well. So I'm all in winning games. From here on out, let's win games. And isn't this a great turn? Because in the early on in the season, we were tank mode. And now as we look at each other towards the end of the season, we both have smiles on our face, and we're both saying, let's go spend. Let's go get back in this race. Let's go get back to being the Chicago Cubs. Let's make that next great Cubs team. And they're doing it, man. These next 9 games, let's win 6 out of 9 of them. Why not? Yeah. Let's win 7 out of 9 of them. Shit, let's win all 9 of them. That way, we can absolutely look at Jed and look at Ricketts and go, you see this? They're coming along. They got it. Let's start, churning out some playoff teams here, man. And that's how they do it. Win these games down the stretch, cap the season, and then all of us on these podcasts, and I know there's a million other of them that people probably listen to who listen to our show too. We're all going to be singing the same tune. It'll be please spend. And I love when that happens, because that means the next great Cubs team is right on the horizon.
Amen to that, man. What a great little soliloquy there to cap off the show. And like you said, Juice, win these games. And as Scott notes here in the comments, finish 7-2 to hit the over for Joey is still alive and well.
Yeah, Scott, he's not suffering. He's not missing meals. I don't know if you see what he's doing on the NFL side. That man, every week I look at that little list and I go, hey, mama, there goes that man. And of course, he's like 16-2, or what it seems like every week. It's crazy to see the amount of bets he puts in. If you're not following, Mr. Joey Cheese on Twitter, you're missing out on some money right now.
Absolutely. I didn't follow him this week, and damn it, I should have, because my bets didn't do so hot personally this week. Bad beat of the week was Bears -3.5.
And the funny thing is go ahead and follow him, because there'll be a slump soon, and then there'll be the fade the cheese moment that we'll absolutely be singing on this show too.
We 100% every season get to a point where it becomes fade Joey season, and it's coming. But ride the hot hand while we got it going. I agree with you there, Juice. And yeah, man, I'm just excited. I'm excited for what the future holds. I'm excited for what it brings. Even the minor leagues next year are still going to be fun, even with this Cubs team likely being much more competitive in 23. I think it's going to be really cool to watch it, and I'm so stoked. But Juice, as we said, not done yet. Second to last home series coming up this week against the Philadelphia Phillies, who are in that playoff conversation in the NL. And Cubs can be a little bit of spoilers by being assholes and taking a couple of games here. And you absolutely have the pitching to do it. So Tuesday and Wednesday's games are 6:40 starts. Thursday will be a beautiful 1:20 start on getaway day. We'll be back with you for sure after that Thursday game. It'll be a nice early show, probably somewhere around the 5 o'clock hour on Thursday. And we'll be talking about this series, and hopefully it's another series W. It will be Zach Wheeler on the bump for the Phillies tomorrow against Marcus Stroman. So that's a hell of a pitching matchup. Wednesday will be Aaron Nola against Hayden Wesneski. Again, as Juice said, he's getting probably 2 starts down the stretch here. Tune into him, enjoy him, because he's going to be good. I was actually supposed to be at Wednesday night's game. I can't go now. I'm very sad because I would have loved to have seen Hayden Wesneski in person. Going to have to wait till next year, but that's okay. And then we got Javier Assad against R. Suarez. And I'm going to click in here and get some detail on who this guy is, because I don't know who he is. Ranger Suarez. He's a lefty, 27-year-old lefty going for the Phils on Thursday. Juice, thoughts, opinions, what you think for this series. And since we are at the start of a new series, we are going to do some Fly the W picks too before we got it here. But my friend, the floor is yours.
You said it best, Ron. Be assholes. I love when teams are completely out of it and have nothing to play for, and then just kick the shit out of the team that needs to win the most. Because that just shows so much grit, shows a culture. It shows absolutely that the manager is in charge. It's exactly why, there's exactly what we just talked about. It's how you cap your season. This is another one. It's a playoff caliber team that you can add to that Mets series and say, in the second half, we swept the Mets, and then the Phillies needed to win the most, and look, we kicked their ass too. So yeah, absolutely be assholes. I'm hoping they're assholes. Go out there. I hope Marcus Stroman goes out and shoves, and they win a close ball game, learn how to win. This is, hey man, I've never been so excited to be a Cub fan over the past 2 years. Like watching them play this series against Pittsburgh, and I know it's just Pittsburgh, but we said it. Pittsburgh has a lot of talent, and watching them play in the second half, pretty much like being governed, because the Cubs didn't spend, on position players or any full money in last offseason on guys who are going to be here. This Cubs team is playing handcuffed and playing this well. So go out there and cap it. Send a message to the whole league that, hey, we're going to play this second half to the fullest. We're going to end on a high note, and we're absolutely going to, show you that second half record over the course of the offseason to every single free agent. Like, hey, you could either be a part of this or you don't have to be a part of this. But it all starts tomorrow against the Phillies, and it starts exactly with them going out and playing a clean baseball game. Guys who maybe won't be on this roster, but play a clean game. They will. David Ross, I hope, has the lineup set and ready to go with some guys that are playing for their jobs, play hungry, and that's exactly why this team keeps winning, because it's when you're fighting a guy who has nothing to lose, that's the dangerous man in the room. Something I've always heard throughout my life. The guy with nothing to lose is always the most dangerous, and the Cubs have nothing to lose. It's not these teams that you play in a series, when the Phillies play the Mets or the Braves or whatever. This is the Cubs. The Phillies are supposed to win. The Cubs have absolutely nothing to lose, so go out there and play it. Take 2 out of 3. Take all 3. That'd be friggin' awesome. And cap your season, and then you could put it in your cap and say, hey, look, we beat 2 playoff teams in this pack. Actually, we knocked 1 playoff team out because they're vying for that last wild card spot. So we knocked 1 playoff team out because we played baseball well down the stretch, and that's exactly what I hope to do.
Yeah, and you said it best, man. I'm just going to add, I want to see 3 great starting pitching performances. I feel like nowadays that's almost a certainty with how well this starting pitching has been. And yeah, be assholes. Be assholes. Just fuck with this Phillies team. Screw them over. They only have a 1.5 game lead on the Brewers. You could play, you could play spoiler, and I mean, they could let the Brewers into the playoffs, which would be kind of gross regardless, but you get my point. Nothing to lose. Go out and take it. Juice, do you have a Fly the W pick for us for this series?
I'm going to pick all the Cubs because I think this is going to be a series win that caps the season. It's going to be a lot of different guys contributing, but if I'm going to have to pick one, I'll limit it. I will take one. I'll take Nico Horner.
I like it. Yeah, hopefully we get to see a lot more of him too. I know he's still working back from that triceps. I'm pretty sure the intention is for him to still play. So yeah, I like that pick. I'm going to go ahead and also go kind of on a path of a known name on this team. He's got 41 doubles. It's only like the third Cub in recent years to have over 40 doubles. I'm going to go ahead and take Ian Happ. I think he's going to continue to be hot. More extra base hits. Maybe he puts one out into the stands. Hey, get close to 20 homers this year and have 40 doubles. Whew, love to see it. So Ian Happ is my fly the W pick. But Juice, before we get out of here, I do want to remind everybody Cubs on Tap is the official Cubs podcast, the On Tap Sportsnet. You can please like, rate, review, subscribe. I saw it earlier in our comment section here from Jeremiah. I'm going to try and find it. He said, congrats on 400 subs on YouTube. Hey, thanks. And tell your friends to subscribe to us so they can watch along with us live, watch these back later, whatever way necessary. You can join in on the Cubs on Tap conversation. You can follow along with us on social media at Cubbies on Tap, CUBBIES. That's Twitter and Instagram. I am at Luce on Tap on the Bluebird app. Juice is at Juice on Tap on the Bluebird app. Juice on Tap, Luce on Tap, Juice on Tap, Luce on Tap. Also go follow the guy that is credited with that reference at Joey Knows Nothing. At Teddy Freddy 270 is going to be at the ballpark tomorrow. That's cool and tough. And also follow at Bulls Guy Rob and at Brandon MK. They do great work for us here on the Cubs side of the house. Bulls, Bears, Blackhawks, you know the drill. They're all in full swing. Bulls Media Day today. Our Bulls team was super busy over at On Tap Sportsnet. Blackhawks play their first preseason game of the year tomorrow as well. They're coming in quick. Four Feathers we just recorded last week. We'll be coming back to you later this week as well. And again, Bears on Tap. Bears are 2-1. It's cool and tough. So, well in swing, and Cubs fans, more than ever, give your White Sox friends a hug. Tell them it's gonna be okay. Maybe. But at least they don't have to see. At least they don't have to see Tony La Russa the rest of the year. And then send them over to our boys at Sox on Tap because they still do a great job covering the South Sider. So once again, ontapsportsnet.com, at OnTap Sportsnet on social media, the OnTap Sports Network. Go ahead and check out what's on tap in Chicago sports. Juice, it is always a pleasure, my friend. A series win is cool and tough in Pittsburgh. They're back for 3 this week with the Fightin' Phils. We'll be back after Thursday's game to recap this one. There's just 2 more series against the Reds, and baseball comes to a close for 2022.
No.
I know it's crazy how quick it went, but we'll have plenty of great off-season content to keep people appetite, in check as well. Of course, after we take about 2 weeks off because it's been a grind.
Yeah, we'll need some time. You need some time. I need some time. I'm sure Joey Cheese and Teddy Freddy. We definitely we need a little bit of R&R. We need to meet the, what they say, man. You got to re-meet the family, re-meet the kids. You got to spend some time. That's exactly what we do here. It comes on tap. But I personally, on our way out here, want to thank everybody who's listened throughout the season. We're going to continue to do that. Great. We do that every show. But special thank you for everybody who's jumped in the comments, maybe even listened to a 10-second clip of us on Twitter and said, hey, those guys are pretty cool, and subscribed. I absolutely love the interactions as well. We always do the Twitter back and forth. That way, we can have good baseball conversations, because Cubs on Tap is the podcast of the guys who know nothing, are not behind the scenes, but are going to tell you the exact truth in the way they see it. And I just want to thank everybody for having the great conversations we've had over the course of this season.
Juice, I couldn't have said it better myself, my friend. Way to send us out on a high note. And my friend, what do you say? We get out here the only way we know how, at Cubs on Tap.
FTC, baby, FTC.
And let's go Cubbies.